This is the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast, episode number 47. And this episode of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast is sponsored by the voiceoverathlete.com. You can go there to find out all kinds of good posts that I've put up there about how to deflame your way through your diet, reduce inflammation. You can see some videos on how to relax your eyes after spending a day in front of a computer screen, some breathing exercises, and many, many more things to come on the voiceoverathlete.com. And also, we are sponsored by the book Voice Over Legal by Rob Siglampaglia. You don't think you need this book? Here's a question for you. Have you ever been asked to do a celebrity impression for a commercial? If you have, you might want to think twice, unless you live in a particular state. You can find out why impersonations can be a problem and why you could get sued if you do one, and which state is exempt from all of that on page 28 of the Voice Over Legal book. Now, we've arranged a discount for you to save up to $5. That's up to 20% off the list price of the book, and you can support the podcast at the same time. If you're a voice artist and you're treating your business as a business, you need this book. Just go to voiceoverlegal.com. When you go to voiceoverlegal.com, enter the promo code VMP at checkout to save $5 off the cost of the book. That's promo code V as in voice, M as in marketing, and P as in podcast at checkout to save $5 off the cost of the book, and you'll support the podcast at the same time. Thanks. And now back to the show. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. My name is John Melly, and this is the podcast dedicated to teaching in-depth and advanced marketing strategies for people in the voiceover and audio production professions. My goal is to help you make more money by showing you ways to leverage your time, charge more for your talents, and allow you to spend more time doing the things you want to do in your life. Hey there, it's John. How are you? Thanks for spending some time with me today. I do appreciate it. Wow, we have had a ton of downloads. As of this recording, there have been 52,277 downloads of the various odd and sundry episodes of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. Thank you very, very, very much. I have had a busy week. I've spoken with John Florian, and he and I have decided that we're going to put together a webinar on the VoiceOver Athlete, and that'll be taking place in early December. And so you can start to, I think we're going to start promoting that in late September, but you're hearing about it first here. So I'm very excited about that. John reached out to me and we got online and we had a conversation. I think we're going to put something together that's pretty cool for you. Also spoke with Rodney Salisbury, and we've got him coming up next week for another episode on the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. So tune in to that next week. He's always got a lot of great projects going on, and we're going to be talking about those and some marketing ideas and mindset ideas and branding ideas. So be sure to tune into the next episode with Rodney Salisbury. So I've got in this part of the podcast, I usually tell you a little story, and I got to talk to you about this thing that drives me nuts. And I hope it's not something that you engage in when you're doing business. And that's trying to do business on your cell phone when you're doing your business, if you know what I'm saying. I was in the men's room the other day, and I hear this guy walk up to, the urinal, and I'm hearing this, yeah. Oh, no, I'm hearing this one-sided conversation. And I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? You can't even take however long it takes, 3 minutes to take care of business, give yourself a break, and give yourself a bathroom break? I mean, this has gotten ridiculous. Standing at the urinal or sitting on the toilet, and you're talking to somebody. My brother Eric said this to me years ago, and I know he's not the one that coined the phrase, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think of my marketing mind here, and I'm thinking, what is the person on the other end of the phone getting from this? You walk into a men's room and it echoes and it gets reverby. They've created reverbs in rooms like bathrooms because it echoes. That's beside the point. But I'm wondering, on the other end of the thing, are they hearing like the water running and the toilets flushing? And I'm thinking to myself, if I was on a call with a vendor or a client or something like that, I'm pretty sure that I'd call them on it or be like, you know what? I don't want to do business with this, because what kind of respect is there in that? Not necessarily, self-respect, but respect for the person on the other end of the phone. So here's what I did. I was, in the men's room, and I hear this guy, oh yeah, right. So you know what I do? I start flushing the toilet. A lot. And then I start, going, in the background. I'm basically shaming this person to get out of the bathroom, off the phone, as quickly as possible. I want them to say, I gotta go because I gotta go. Or, hold on just a second. I mean, really, I feel like I'm it's invasive. I feel like I'm, afraid to make any noise because it might come across on the phone. And then I think to myself, well, wait a minute. Who's it? What is this? I'm going to turn this 180 degrees. I'm going to embarrass this sucker so that he stops using the phone in the bathroom. I mean, if you want to text and scroll and look at Facebook on your smartphone while you're doing your business, that's one thing. But don't involve somebody else. It's like they're in the bathroom with you. You know what I'm saying? So I'm on this mission to shame people into not using their bathrooms, or at least making them feel a little self-conscious and using their cell phones in the bathroom. All right, so there's enough of that. I hope you'll join me on this quest. Thank you for letting me rant. I want to tell you about a new resource. It is kind of a new resource. It's an addition to a resource that I've had on the VoiceOver Marketing podcast for a while. I have done episodes on the importance and power of using your personal story, your journey through life, as part of your marketing. And I've given out a free resource for quite some time now, and it is the VoiceOver Story Marketing Piece, where you go and you can get a free copy of it, you get a PDF. Just go to the link in the show notes and enter your name and email address, and I send you a free copy of my VoiceOver Story Marketing Piece. And it's been a very, very popular download. Anyway, I have gone through my files. I was going through some stuff, and I thought, you know what? I've got some more material here that I can share with the listeners of this podcast. And so what I have done is I put together a personal story deluxe marketing package. And it's 3 things. It is a 20-minute audio presentation on personal story marketing, how to use personal story marketing in your marketing. And it was a presentation that I did to my VoiceOver Marketing Mastermind group a couple of years ago. That I have never done that presentation anywhere else. It's never been available before. It's only been for that VoiceOver Marketing Mastermind group, and the members each paid $179 a month to be a member of that marketing mastermind group. And that recording hasn't been available until now, and I've decided I'm going to make that portion of the mastermind group recording available to you, along with I have taken that personal story marketing piece. It's a black and white PDF, but what I've done is I've gone through step by step and color-coded each of the paragraphs of my personal story marketing piece. They're color-coded to highlight the strategy behind the story elements. Each paragraph is in the story for a reason. What I've also done is I've created a color key guide explaining what each color in the story element means and why it's included in the story. step by step. The total value of the package is $278.95. I added it all up between what it would cost a voiceover marketing mastermind group to belong for that presentation. That's $179. The color-coded story is $24.95, and then the color key is $75. I've got that all together for you for only $17.95. That's it. So if you haven't gotten a copy of the personal voiceover story marketing piece, you can still get it for free. All you have to do is go to the show notes for this episode, episode 47, click on the link, and it'll take you to a page where you will see a short video from me explaining what I just shared with you about the package. But if you don't want that, you just still want the free piece, all you have to do is enter your name and email address, and we will send that to you absolutely free, just because you're listening to this podcast. If you want to take advantage of this marketing package for less than $18, you get a 20-minute audio presentation, a color-coded copy of the marketing piece, and then a key, a guide, a color-coded guide that tells you what each story element means, why it's included in the story, and the strategy behind it, all to create an effective marketing piece that builds a relationship with your clients. You can go ahead and order that too. So that's that. And it's only available here through the Voiceover Marketing Podcast. My guest today is John Ackley, and he is the host of the System Smarts Podcast. And we are going to have a conversation about the importance of systems and how you can create systems and use systems in your voiceover business to leverage your time and increase your efficiency and effectiveness and your bottom line, most important. So let's get to that conversation that I had with John Ackley right now. Well, welcome back. As I mentioned in the first part of the program, my guest today is John Ackley from the System Smarts Podcast. And John is a systems engineer and software developer who brings the methods and principles of system design to the people who need it most. Folks like us, entrepreneurs, voiceover talent, small business owners. And John, like I mentioned before, is the host of the System Smarts Podcast. And the way I met John was he reached out to me a few weeks ago to have me on as a guest to talk on his podcast to discuss the blog that I started about 2 months ago called The Voiceover Athlete. And John and I had a great conversation and going back and forth, and I said, you know what, you'd be a great guest on my podcast because you can talk about the types of systems that pretty much any business owner should have. So, John, how are you? This is going to be confusing, John and John.
Well, this John is very well. Thank you, John.
I mentioned in the quick bio that you sent over that you're a systems engineer and a software developer. Talk to me how that all started and, you know, how this whole interest in systems evolved and how did the podcast come about? Just tell us your story.
So it started at college when I became a voice major, studying classical voice performance at a liberal arts college. And as part of being a liberal arts program, I had to study a variety of other math and science topics, one of which was the introduction to computer programming. Well, I never looked back. I changed majors. I've continued to sing and play a bunch of instruments over the years, but my true passion is now making computers do cool things.
What's some of the cool things that you can make computers do, John?
Well, I've worked in a lot of industries. Probably the coolest was robotics, where we make tracked vehicles, large tracked vehicles, run around and not bump into things. And I've worked in telecom, where we synchronize the diagnostics from a bunch of equipment over large geographic areas so that we know what's happening. But I also work in software for businesses. So, yeah, it's been a really broad spectrum of systems and technologies. And podcasting has been one of the really cool things where I've had to set up some systems. I haven't had to program anything, thank goodness. But all the technology has been pretty cool. Great.
So how did the interest in starting a podcast start for you?
That is a good question. I started listening to podcasts probably, a decade ago.
Wow.
And, yeah, pretty early on. And a friend of mine, actually, my nephew, turned me on to a couple of podcasts that were topical to some of the conversations we were having, and I got totally captivated. One was a gentleman who started his podcast with a digital recorder in his car, driving back and forth to work. The audio quality was really bad, and occasionally he would have tangents like swearing at the driver who just got off. But holy cow, what an eye-opening experience to see that someone could turn driving back and forth in their car to work, recording a digital recorder, turning that into a podcast that he published 5 days a week. And then within like 2 years, that was his main source of income. That became the life turning point for him, where he challenged the business as usual model and created content, created an audience that found that content valuable, and was able to step away from multiple businesses that he owned and had interest in. So that's kind of where I got started. And then the actual key turning point for me personally was I wanted to start my own business. And I thought back to that example, and I said, well, okay, I don't see anybody else talking about this particular topic. People talk about, narrow technology. People talk about business processes, but no one's really talking about design of systems in general. So with my systems engineering background, I said, I got this. So that's how I started. Initially, the first dozen episodes have been interviews with people who have designed some cool system or study a system that occurs in nature or occurs, naturally as part of, like social systems.
Interesting. Your podcast is something that you're doing to grow an audience and build a business from.
Yes.
Excellent. Systems. Let's define the term, because everybody talks about systems and says, I should develop a system for my business, or you need systems in your business to help you, blah, blah, blah. I guess the concept sounds really good. Let's define system and then talk about what systems can do.
John, a system is very difficult to describe because we witness them in our lives every day. But I run with a couple of very basic definitions. First, the system has a boundary where you can define what's in it and what's not in it. Second, at that boundary, it takes some inputs. It takes either energy or money or, a signal from another computer system, or some human tapping on a key. And then it also has outputs. What does it produce? It's, and the things that it produces are either useful or they're waste. And what do they do? So, like a power plant, an electric power plant is a very big system. It takes in coal or uranium rods or hydro power from a river, and it puts out hot air, steam, and electricity, and assorted other things. But, you can look at any system by defining first its boundary, and then the gazintas, what its inputs are, and the gazoutas, the things that come out of it, either useful things or not useful.
So let's just stick on this for a second. What do you mean by boundary? Because I think that's important. Because it's hard for me to conceive what you mean by a boundary. So if you want to use the power plant as an example, what's the boundary for that power plant?
Okay, so for that, the boundary would be, so I used to work in a coal-fired unit when I was in college here in Western Pennsylvania. The boundary would be the place, the yard where the dump trucks drop off the coal would be one part of the boundary. And the substation where the high voltage electricity comes out would be another part of the boundary. And you can define other aspects of that. But those are the two key parts of the boundary. You understand what's going into it and what's coming out.
Okay.
They took in river water to cool things and to boil the water, which turned the turbines. And I can go on into the moving parts quite a bit. But the river also represents a boundary where they have an input of cool river water, and by EPA regulations, they have an output of equally cool river water. And that's another part of the boundary. And you can kind of shape the boundary by defining where the inputs and outputs are.
Okay, the gazintas and the gazoutas, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that, the gazintas. You mentioned, let's set the electric plant aside. That's obviously a system that we encounter every day. But you said that line, we encounter systems every day. Could you just mention a few of those that we might not necessarily think of as systems, just to raise our level of awareness?
Well, you can look around your office and point to hundreds of systems, or at least dozens. The laptop computer, the monitor, they are separate systems, and you hook them together and they become larger. You yourself are a system made up of, the skin, the organ of the skin, and all of its your internal parts and fluids and skeleton and your brain. So the ins and outs of a human are, we've learned those from childhood.
Right.
So you are a walking system.
Or compositive systems like the nervous system, your digestive system, your cardiovascular system. Okay.
Correct. It's made up of systems as well. So the further in we go, we can look at subsystems and identify their boundaries. So we identify the boundaries of the nervous system by what doctors and anatomy specialists have defined. Yeah, we could talk a lot about the human body as a system. And in fact, we did a little bit on your episode.
Right.
Where we talked about the voice actor athlete as needing to understand that the column of air that they use to produce sound has to have a support in a part of the system, and it resonates through another part of the system, etc.
Right.
If I get too abstract on you, just slap me and we'll try to tone it down.
No, it's very good. It just, I think it's a couple of episodes back, Kelly Carruthers Buttrick was on our show. She was a guest on our show, and she wants to be the voiceover talent for Jeep. And she talked about your level of awareness. And I have to say, ever since that episode, I see Jeeps everywhere. So you raise your level of awareness. So that's why I'm asking you this question. It's like, okay, so let's raise our level of awareness about systems and how we use systems, or we encounter systems, and we ourselves are systems, or a composite of various systems. So let's raise the level of awareness about systems in our lives. But let's talk a little bit about business systems, types of systems that a business can use, and what can let's step back for a second. What can a system do for a business, John?
One of the key benefits of instituting systems in your business is having an easily understandable part of your business that, one, is documented, two, is semi-automated or fully automated, so that it runs without a lot of attention from the business owner. Three, other people or other parts can be substituted into that system. So you have, kind of redundancy of who can take care of it or what can take care of that system. It's well documented in the sense that anybody if you're trying to sell your business, you've got it all documented so people can understand what your systems are. Or if you want to replicate your system in a franchise model, that documentation helps you do that very clearly without people having to kind of read your mind about how things work. And four, it frees you up as a business owner to kind of focus on building the business and spending time with your family or on your boat.
That sounds good. Boat time.
Boat.
So, simple example, like McDonald's is a well-known franchise, and it's basically every step is codified in terms of how long the burger should cook for, what the size of the burger is, where to put it on the bun, how much ketchup, mayo, mustard, relish, onions, all that kind of stuff is all documented. So each franchisee is making the same cheeseburger that, somebody in Pittsburgh versus Ottumwa, Iowa, versus Boston, Massachusetts. You go into a McDonald's and it's going to taste like a McDonald's burger.
Right. There's little variance or no variance in many cases.
Okay. So not getting into the factory food conversation, which is a totally different topic, but so that's a system. And so you're basically saying systems create efficiencies for business owners.
That's what I'm saying, yes.
Okay. For a solopreneur, and you're a voice guy, you're a singer, you could put the hat on, I suppose, of a voiceover person or a production person. You've done podcasting now, so you've probably worked on audit. Easy for me to say again. Worked on editing audio, etc. But you're also a business owner. Can you share with us maybe some systems that you have in your business we might want to consider?
Absolutely. My business as a system, that's how I look at it. And then I break it down into pieces that allow me to focus on a particular part at a time. But I always keep in the back of my mind that everything works together. So if I create an asset, either like a voiceover introduction to my podcast, I will attempt to create that in a way that can be leveraged for other audio or video assets. So, that's kind of a reuse model where I try to keep things modular and think about future uses. I also do that with my copy. So when I write copy for my podcast, I do that in a program where all of my podcast copy is kept together, separate, organized by episode, with a template as kind of a thing I can drag and drop and duplicate easily for each new episode. In this same program, I also keep my blog content, my newsletter, my weekly email-only newsletter that I send out, and other ads, copy that I run. So it's all in one place. I can refer to other parts of it very easily. So in one case, you can look at this as a tool, but in the other case, I look at this as my system of managing my copy for all of my aspects of my business. The way in which I produce a podcast, so I have a system for how I introduce myself to potential guests and invite them to be on the show, and that's an email template that I also keep in this kind of copy management software. It's templated out so I can easily recreate the structure of it by kind of dragging it into my email program and replacing it with, hey, Ben, or whoever I'm introducing myself to. I caught your show on such and such topic, episode number whatever, or I caught your interview on somebody else's show, or I read this blog post you wrote. I introduce myself, I contextualize it for them. So this is all part of the system, part of the template. And then I go on to talk about how they would be a good fit for my audience, how my audience would find them valuable. And I kind of close with, if you're interested. But basically the idea is that the system of introducing myself is documented. I never have to think about how to do that except for replacing the context-specific content. Yeah, so then the whole sequence of they accept, then I have another that I use like Schedule Once as part of the system that brings them directly into my podcast schedule. And from there, I have, a couple of follow-up emails. And then at the end, I thank them that they've been on the show and announcing that the show is live today. And then I have another follow-up email a few weeks later that thanks them again and says, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know, or something that closes it out with kind of an open door policy.
Gotcha. And I've experienced most of those elements of your system as being a guest on your show.
Excellent.
What types of systems do you think every business should have? If there's one thing that they should have, or maybe a handful of systems that people could consider or should consider implementing in their business, what would those be, if any?
I'll start with the obvious caveat. It depends.
Yeah.
But most businesses, especially small businesses, spend most of their time executing the business. And in order to grow the business, if you can take execution of your business and document it in a way that you can find places to put automation, either computer automation or hire a person or contract to a person to replace this tiny part of it, then you can be the person that does that. You don't actually have to, have a 1099 relationship with somebody. You can be the person that does that. But if you document the execution of your business in a way that it has replaceable blocks, then you can understand the parts that is only the business owner can do because they have special knowledge. But there's all this other stuff that we have to do, accounting, social, sometimes some parts of social, editing podcasts. Like you and I each do that ourselves. And I know you described that process as something you enjoy doing. I not so much. I want to get this thing done and out the door. So I'm looking at hiring, that's a block of my podcast production system that I would like to outsource to somebody at some point. I can't afford it right now, but you see what I mean. Like right now, I do that little role.
Sure.
Play that little role in the system. But I've identified it as a role that I could hire someone So every business has an execution model for what they do, document it, divide it up into pieces that you can identify who can do this. Again, what are the skills that are required? Basically, it's the process described in the E-Myth Revisited. In that book, he talks about how to just document your systems of your business in a way that allows you to, you can do them today, but you can step back from, part C and hire somebody to do that. Or you can automate it. Like, there's lots of pieces that I automate. The whole calendaring thing, that's a big block of my system that I don't have to do anything with. I go and update my Schedule Once master schedule, and I point my potential guests to that. And if they show up on my calendar, great. If they don't, well, maybe if I really want them on the show, I might ping them again a few months later. But I never worry about trying to negotiate a calendar date with them.
So that frees up a whole bunch of time and a whole bunch of back and forth with emails, etc.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very cool. You've talked a lot about documenting your system. How would one go about doing that?
Well, the simplest thing is to just type up a bullet point list of the steps. I mean, that's the simplest way to get started. There are many complicated ways to graphically describe a system, the workflow from one step to the next. Sometimes there's a decision that has to be made, and that will create a fork in the system workflow.
Yeah.
But there are lots of online systems to help you document these systems, and I don't have any skin in the game for any particular ones, but there's like Process Street and that class of system documentation website service allows you to create the workflow with potential decision points, and with each of the activities that you're capturing, you can record a video, either like a ScreenFlow or Camtasia style thing that walks you through the steps of adding a blog post. Here, I'm opening up the WordPress dashboard. I'm clicking on Add New Post and filling out these and setting these little settings over here. So it depends on how complicated that step is. You can create any one time you do this stuff, just fire up a screen recorder and you can capture the video. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to have video production bumpers and things like that.
Yeah.
Just capture it, upload it to whichever service you're using as part of the definition of that note in the workflow.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. So it doesn't just have to be sitting there typing, okay, first I open up and I click this, open up the software. Then I click File New or File Recent, and then scroll down and find the most recent file or what have you. You can certainly type the first part of that stuff out, but then you're saying as part of that documentation there could be a video or an audio that guides someone through a series of steps to create what you want as the goes outas.
Correct. Correct.
Very good.
Correct. And you can look at each one of these nodes as kind of a mini system in themselves. So what do I need to have in my hand or available to me before I can start this node? I need the title of the post. I need the content of the post. I need to, if there's any affiliate links I want to have as part of this post. Those are the inputs that goes into this.
Yep.
And the output is a finished, scheduled blog post.
So like for this episode of the podcast, we have had a system as well. So I've reached out to you, invited you on the program. We scheduled this time. And then I asked you for a bio and a headshot and links to your contact information so that people can connect with you as a result of hearing this podcast. So those are the gazintas. And the gozoutas for this episode will be the episode, which is the audio file and the show notes on the voiceovermarketingpodcast.com. There'll be an episode, and then there will be the show notes with the kind of bullet points about what we're discussing in this episode, your picture, and a link to your website and other resources that you're going to share with us in a few minutes before we wrap up. I don't want to tip my hand yet on what that's going to be, but at any rate, so those are the gozoutas or the outputs. It's going to be the podcast episode that'll be on iTunes, Stitcher, other sources that people can listen to and consume the content, plus also what people will be able to see on the page at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com. Am I being accurate?
You are. And, there are a couple other steps in my process. I also include as part of the completed output of the system, scheduled social. So I do free, right in my blog post dashboard page, I actually create 15 to 18 social posts that go out on several different networks. And once I'm done with those, all I have to do is interact with reply, social, or emails. I'm totally done with the actual episode and all of its promotion.
You're obviously using these systems to leverage your time, and you're batching basically a lot of these activities all together. So those are mini systems, and you've documented all of these things for your business, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So that if you wanted to hire somebody to do that for you, like post your show notes for you, you could say, here's the system to be able to create the show notes.
Yeah, I have a format for them that I try to stick to pretty faithfully so that each show notes page looks the same.
Right.
Answers roughly the same questions, although each interview takes a different path and I don't always get to those.
Yeah, no, I noticed that you asked very good questions in that interview. That was a really good thing. Would it be okay if I linked to your podcast in the show notes for this episode?
Of course, and I will share some other links a little later too.
If you were going to start a business, any business, what system would you set up first?
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to pull out the magic words. It depends.
Yep.
But any system, the first system I would do would be to pull out my calendar, because the calendar is an awesome system, just in and of itself, a paper calendar. It's easy. The gazintas are, new events or changes to existing events that you hear or read, and the output is the output. You see it right there on the calendar.
How you're going to use that block of time is the output.
Exactly. Exactly. Your behavior, and another output is you can see in advance what's coming for the week, or if you look at it the night before, what's coming up the next day. Sometimes I don't look at mine until oh my goodness, I have something in 15 minutes. But, at least you have that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get anything done if it doesn't get on my calendar.
Interesting.
So the first thing I would do as a new business owner would be get a calendar system. Google Calendar is awesome, but, just paper to get started is just make sure everything gets into that one system, that one storage.
One place. Everything goes into gazintas, one place. Yeah, it's a similar thing with me is, I could have multiple inputs for different types of commercials or requests from the different salespeople or the different projects that I'm working on. But, somebody would, send me an email, and the email may have part of an audio file attached to it. And then somebody would come and put a Post-it note on my monitor or on the door to the studio or something like that. And I have forced people into filling out a production order so that nothing comes out of this studio unless a production order precedes it by the person requesting whatever it is. If it's a spec spot, which means, a sample spot, what's a spot going to sound like? Will you make me an MP3 of the commercial so I can send it to the client? They might try and send me an email, say, hey, can you blah, blah, blah? But most of the time I will redirect them and say, please submit through the traffic department a production order with all this. Feel free to send me the attachment electronically because that's what I have to work with, but at least fill out a paper production order so that it all comes into one thing. And so the production order is an action item for me. So it's like if I see this paper, I've got to address it in some way. That's a system.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. So the nice thing about that is that all the observable outputs from your studio can be tracked back to a production order. And that very, very powerful system. Stakeholder that says, oh my God, how did that happen? Well, you can dig up the production order and say, right there, it says it right there that we were going to do that.
Yeah, so that's good. Thank you you triggered that in my head. So I never really thought of the production orders as a system, but when you said calendar, everything goes there or nothing else happens, it's like I thought, oh, production orders. Nothing goes out of this studio unless I get a piece of paper requesting it, and it's the same piece of paper. I can't work from Post-it notes and scratch paper and all that kind of stuff. There are too many different variables, and something will fall through the cracks. So systems actually help you not let stuff fall through the cracks.
Yeah, CYA.
Gotcha.
In the technical vernacular there. So to continue
Yeah.
using this calendar for a new business, we're going to take that system and we're going to layer a new system on top of it. And this one's really important. You're going to divide up your time. You're going to say, this number of hours every day, I'm going to work on my system. I'm going to improve it. I'm going to figure out how to reach more markets. I'm going to figure out how to provide more value. And then the rest of the time, I can work in the system or in the business where I'm executing whatever it is. If you wash cars for a living, that's when you wash the car. That little reserved time where you work on the business is critical because you'll never make any forward progress as a business owner unless you're dedicated a certain number of hours every week to helping them. And that simple pre-assignment of time on the calendar is another system. It allows you to switch from the entrepreneur, business owner, manager hat to the technician hat in the terms from E-Myth Revisited. And that technician hat can suck up all of your time if you aren't deliberately reserving time to put on the other hats.
You said what I was thinking about 20 minutes ago in our conversation, and you used the exact prepositions. Working on your business versus working in your business. And you are so right. That's something that I struggle with because you can get caught up in for me, it's recording scripts that come in and editing the scripts and mixing down the audio and the doing of the business. And you really need to set the time up to be able to create the systems that can do things for you that will eventually free up time down the road for you. Am I right?
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So here's the human nature question for you. How do you stick to that? How do you not let the working in the business take away from the working on your business part? Do you set up another system?
No. Honor your calendar.
That's
the basis of all of everything else becomes the calendar. It supersedes everything. You can shift things around. I have a special appointment to detail somebody's caddy Friday morning at 8. Well, okay, maybe that's your normal work on the business time. But you're going to make a special exception because this customer is really important. That doesn't mean you get a pass on the reserve time. You still have to put that in.
So you put that in somewhere else on that very same day.
Yeah, or maybe over the weekend if you reserve your weekends for play.
Right.
Like some people do. I mean, entrepreneurs are usually working on a lot of weekends, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Don't cheat yourself of that time to improve your business. It won't improve by detailing that Cadillac. That'll keep a customer happy and it'll put a little dollar in your pocket, but it is not going to help you franchise your business into the next super car cleaning business, right?
Right. You're not going to grow your business just by working in the business. You grow the business by working on the business.
Correct.
That's a great takeaway from this whole thing. And, it's stuff that I struggle with. I'll be perfectly open with folks, who's perfect? Not me. But that's a great, great takeaway from this episode, working on versus working in. And I know you're going to say it depends, but how much time would you say it's probably front loaded, right? That you working on the business probably takes a little bit more time up front. And once you get the systems in place, it takes a little less time? Or does it depend on the different types of projects you want to undertake?
It certainly does depend. But my mentor, Chris Brogan, is absolutely adamant that you stick to 3 hours a day working on your business.
3 hours a day?
Yeah, he says if you can't find 3 hours somewhere to work on your business, he's going to march into your house and help you find it. It's it's there. You just have to look for it.
Yeah, shoot your television.
Yeah, exactly. And 3 hours doesn't sound like a lot, but boy, when you add up all those ancillary things you do, it magically appears. One sitcom a night might be one of your hours. One trip out to the coffee shop might be 20 minutes. And those 20-minute dealies add up fast.
Oh, sure they do.
So pretty soon you've lost 3 hours of productive time that you could be doing something with. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to work late hours. I don't. I try to shut off about 8 o'clock every day. But I also start pretty early.
Yeah. 3 hours, to me, is a lot of time because I work in a 60-second world most of the time. And it's amazing. I always marvel at how much can actually be accomplished in 60 seconds.
Yes.
And time is our most valuable asset because we're never getting it back. The 30 minutes that we've spent or 40 minutes that we've been having this conversation, they're gone. The nice thing about doing this podcast is a system, if we look at it in a different way, in the sense that we're leveraging our time here through this recording because we're going to publish it and it's going to be there forever. As long as
hopefully evergreen.
Yeah. And it
providing value for a long time. Yes.
Exactly. So we're leveraging our time through recording this like we would a screencast or an audio on how to do a particular blog post. We're doing an audio on how to set up systems. So it's kind of cool. You said we were exposed to systems all day long. I'm kind of talking myself into it, but what you've done is helped me raise my level of awareness of really what all the systems that are around us all day long. So that's really cool, John. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah. There was something I wanted to say that I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there. But on versus in and 3 hours a day, that's what it was. I was talking about how much you can actually get accomplished in a short period of time. That's really cool. May I ask you one more question? And then I want to be respectful of your time. And then we want to ask people if they want to get in touch with you, how to do that. This is something I'm always interested in, is what's your morning routine? If you want to share that. If you don't, that's fine.
I'm happy to share. I'm happy to share. My morning routine starts the night before.
Okay, great.
And I try to review. I don't always do this because sometimes it's a late night with the wife or something.
Yep.
But I try to review what's up the next day. When successful, that means that I've kind of scheduled out the big bones of what I want to do in my 3-hour working on the business. And I want to take note of what I'm doing. Like if there's scheduled events, I know I might have to work around something. But that gives me peace of mind. It's like I can go to sleep, or sometimes it gives me acid reflux, depending on what's on the next day. But
right.
The idea is that when I wake up, I don't have to think about what I'm going to do. I know what I'm going to do. So I pad out of bed. I do the bathroom routine, which includes weighing myself. I weigh myself religiously every morning. Just one of those metrics that you never know when it helps. What do they say? You can't improve anything unless you have good metrics about what it is. And, one of those metrics is the result of what I was doing the last few days in terms of eating and exercising. And that result shows up in my scale every morning.
Right.
So I record that in an app I use. I go get a glass of orange juice, and I pad upstairs to my office, and I start my 3 hours. And this usually takes place about 5:30 in the morning.
So you're up at 5:30 and you do your thing, and then orange juice, and then you work till around 8:30 on your business.
Yep. About 7:30 or 8, I hear my wife. I take a break. I go down and make coffee. Mm-hmm. When I'm done with my 3 hours, I sit with her for as long as we have something to talk about. Then I do my 7-minute workout, which is this really easy but tough calisthenic workout. And I do 1, 2, 3 cycles on that, depending on like how much time and how much energy I have. I grab a shower, I get dressed, and then I get on to whatever I need to do for clients.
Very good. Or record podcast episodes with me.
Exactly.
Right.
So usually I'm kind of ready to tackle the world by 10.
Gotcha. As part of your working on the business, is there that 3 hours devoted to reading and or writing / journaling? Or is it just like, okay, here are the systems that I want to implement in my business? Or are you learning about systems or getting ideas for future systems that you want to create? Or is it all of that?
It's all of that. I do a little reading and research, but I try not to do that during those 3 hours. I try to make my 3 hours have some output, like each of the 20-minute blocks or hours that I do that.
Uh-huh.
I try to have something that I can show for that time. If reading and research is part of that, then I'll make notes. And it's like, this is a condensation of what I just read. I just don't want those hours to disappear. It's like, oh, what did I really do? I surfed the web for 45 minutes. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to show for that. Right. Except bookmarks.
Yeah.
So, but the other activities are like writing copy for an online course I have coming up. I'll spend, an hour on that. I'll spend an hour reworking my website. I'm moving to a new hosting platform over the next week or so. And, I'm trying to rework design and copy and things like that. It may include some podcasting stuff, although a lot of that takes place outside of the 3 hours. Journaling. You asked about journaling. What a great thing for anyone to do.
Yeah.
I'm such a bad journaler.
Me too.
I really am.
Me too.
I've started more journals than I can even think. And part of the morning routine that I want to have includes, 20 minutes of journaling.
Yeah.
But I don't want that as part of my 3 hours, right? That's more reflective. So I kind of blow it off most days and just dive into work.
I asked that because I have done the same thing. I've thought, you know what, this is a good thing for me to do. And in fits and starts, and I'll have times when I'll do it, and it could just be random stuff. I think somebody, I can't remember who it was, but he calls them the morning pages. And for 2 minutes, he just sits down and writes nonstop, or for 10 minutes or something like that. Just doesn't, the pen doesn't leave the paper. He just, whatever comes into the mind. And an interesting exercise that I thought would be curious. So I like to get what people's routines are. Success leaves clues.
I like that.
Yes.
I like that very much.
Yeah. So
it's kind of akin to my, I want something to show for it, right?
Yeah, I really like that. So your output when you're writing for your online course, it's the course materials.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. Or the storyboard or some other tangible that helps me ultimately move towards getting this course launched.
Right. Now, do you work with a hard deadline on when that course gets launched? Is that part of your system too? And then you back it out?
I have one now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a real issue. So setting goals and what is the thing that you want your system to accomplish? This is a part that I get into more depth in other places, but
right.
Every system should have not only what it outputs, but kind of by when, what's the schedule or the deadline that will output it. And if you don't have that, it's easy to kick the can down the road.
Right.
And I've been doing that with this online course for a year. I literally started this course, working on its content over a year ago. I basically drew a line in the sand on September 1st. I'm going to have this thing launched, at least a soft launch by then to maybe some limited people that I can get some feedback. But boy, if I don't put that line in the sand, I could just keep kicking it down the road.
Right.
Because there's always stuff that comes up that I could fill my time with.
Yep.
Even if it's working on the business, it's still other stuff that's not getting this one thing that I really want to do done.
So this has been a great conversation, and thank you for being so generous with your time. I've learned an awful lot. And again, I think most of this has just been to raise my level of awareness of systems, how many there are. And everything you're doing really is a system. Sometimes a system could be working for you and against you, right? I mean, you could have
There are definitely aspects that, provide negative feedback or negative, net effects.
Right. We won't even get into that. But I suppose you probably address some of that in your course.
I do.
Well, I want you to be able to tell everybody when your course goes live, because I think that'll be something that's interesting to a lot of the folks listening to the podcast. But if people want to learn more about you and your work, what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you and learn more about systems and how they can implement systems in their business?
Well, my home base is John Ackley at johnackley.com. So JOHNACKLEY.com. I reached by the email john@johnackley.com, Twitter @JohnAckley0, the digit 0. I kind of pay a little attention to Twitter. If anybody sends me that there, email me directly or check out what I've got going on the website. Of course, the System Smarts podcast is available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and a few other places. Those are the big ones.
Right.
System Smarts, big red logo with some gears in a box.
Yeah, it's a great logo. I like that. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm working with that same designer to do some of the assets for my course.
Excellent.
So I'm really excited to be working with him again.
Very, very good. Well, John, this is great. I mean, if there's one thing you want to leave our audience with, one thought, what would that be?
Don't take any of the things that happen to you during the day for granted. Be deliberate, make systems out of those things that happen repeatedly or that suck you into a period of time that you could easily hand off to somebody else or to some automation. And that's about it. If you want to learn more about how to design those systems, send me an email or check out my website.
That sounds great. John, thank you again. This is fantastic.
Thank you, John. I really had a great time.
Uncle Frank, why don't you say goodbye to everybody for us?
Our program originates in the Boston studios. We hope you'll join us again. Until then, we bid you au revoir, keep your chin up, and the best of luck.
Well, that's it for this episode of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to it at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com so you'll get notices of new episodes, and please share it with your friends and colleagues in the voiceover world. Also, it would be a huge help if you'd like this podcast and rate it on iTunes to help keep it near the top of the list. Feel free to share your comments and questions about this episode and future topics you'd like discussed at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com. And if you'd like more information on one-on-one coaching where we focus on growing your business, feel free to drop me a line at my cyber assistant's email address at mike@johnmelly.com. Thanks for listening. Now go out there and share your voice with the world.